This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Aaron Natte. Welcome to our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world. Well, today we spend the hour looking at politics, money, and the pursuit of oil, focusing on what's known as the Oil Road, a series of pipelines stretching from the oil-rich Caspian Sea to Europe. Key nations along the route include Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey. The oil giant BP operates the main pipeline. The oil-rich dictatorship of Azerbaijan is about to hold elections amidst a major decline in the country's record on human rights and freedom of expression. Located between Iran and Russia and lining the Caspian Sea, Azerbaijan is a vital energy supplier to Europe and a transit route for U.S. troops in Afghanistan. Critics say this has led Western powers to turn a blind eye to abuses since President Ilham Aliyev first came to power in 2003, following the death of his father, the former president. Ilham Aliyev amended the constitution to remove term limits in 2009. On Wednesday, he's set to win his third term in office amidst opposition claims of fraud and intimidation. A spokesperson for his re-election campaign predicted an easy victory.
People do want in Azerbaijan. They would like to have a good life, good salary, prosperity, and we have in Azerbaijan. We have prosperity, we have very high dynamic of development, and it means that the people should support the person who organized this policy.
In the past year and a half, Human Rights Watch has documented Azerbaijan's arrest of more than 140 high-ranking members of opposition political parties, government critics, and journalists. Its government has also taken a tough line on dissent in the oil drilling area of Baku. And it's this area that begins the book by one of our guests today, called The Oil Road, Journeys from the Caspian Sea to the City of London.
In it, co-author James Marriott cites a business think tank that describes how in Azerbaijan, quote, oil projects sidestep many potential administrative pitfalls and delays. Environmental and labor laws, for example, can prove elastic. The book goes on to examine oil companies and their collusion with governments along the oil road from the Caspian to Europe and its impact on the people, ecology, and politics of the regions it passes through. Well, James Marriott joins us now in our studio here in New York, member of the London-based Arts, Human Rights, and Environmental Justice Organization Platform, as well as Anna Galkina, who also joins us. Both James and Anna will be speaking tomorrow as part of a panel here in New York called Carbon Democracies, Politics, Money, and the Pursuit of Oil. Also with us is Timothy Mitchell, who will be part of that program, author of the book, Carbon Democracy, Political Power in the Age of Oil. His previous books include Colonizing Egypt and Rule of Experts. Professor Mitchell teaches, he is a political theorist, historian, professor, and chair of Columbia University's Department of Middle Eastern, South Asian, and African Studies. We welcome you all to Democracy Now! James Marriott, let's begin with you. Take us to Azerbaijan, a country most people in the United States hardly know about, let alone where it is. Why it is so significant in terms of global oil pipeline politics?
It's very significant because, on the one hand, it holds a significant chunk of the world's oil market, about 1%, which doesn't sound very much, but it does swing the price in many ways. And on the other hand, it's a state on the western side of the Caspian Sea that plays the dominant position for the West's or Western oil companies and Western governments' intervention into the Caspian region. It's the most secure, as it were, bridgehead for the West in the Caspian region.
Place it exactly for us there.
It's almost middle way between the top and the bottom of the Caspian Sea on the western coast of the Caspian. Its offshore area stretches over to the Turkmen offshore area, and its western edge runs onto Georgia, and the northern edge is Russia, and southern edge is Iran.
Now, the route is very treacherous. It goes through mountainous regions. It cuts through aquifers. Can you explain why it goes all the way up to Turkey instead of, say, closer to Iran or even to China?
That's a very, very interesting question. Of course, there was a huge debate about which way oil would be exported from the Azeri fields after the collapse of the Soviet Union. It was in the interests of Western states, particularly the US, to try and run that oil out of the Russian sphere of influence and Russian sphere of control. And the State Department was the key driver for the creation of this route. From the point of view of the oil companies, it would have been easier for them to run it through Russian pipelines. There was a big push for them to run it through an Iranian pipeline or create an Iranian pipeline. But it was the State Department that drove the political requirement that it should be exported to the global market through a space which didn't run through Iran, didn't run through China, and didn't run through Russia. And they drove the idea that this should be pushed. It wasn't actually in the interests of the oil companies, particularly in the first instance.
Now, the Caspian Sea is a very significant area for the United States. It doesn't have the largest marine base there.
That's right. That's correct. I mean, I think what's interesting is that when it was being developed in the early 90s, when it was being pushed in the early 90s in political spheres, it was talked about as being a huge new space of oil and gas production on the scale of Saudi or whatever. Actually, in reality, the amount of oil and gas in the Caspian and the immediate shore is nothing like that. But part of the reason why it was pushed at that scale, I think, was because it was part of a wider geopolitical intent from the US and the Western powers to, in a sense, roll back the developments and territorial acquisitions that had been made by Russia in the 18th century.
And why is pipeline so important? Talk about the politics and laws around pipelines.
Pipelines are very often used as a significant geopolitical tool like this one. The route that we take, myself and Mika Minio, writing a book for Platform, which is out of the general activity and research of our work over the last 10, 15 years, goes not only through the pipeline in the Caucasus, in Azerbaijan, Georgia and Turkey, but also through another pipeline which runs from Italy through Austria to Germany and takes oil from near Trieste to a set of oil terminals and refineries in southern Germany, Austria and Czech Republic. That earlier pipeline, built in the 1960s, was also a geopolitical project. It was part of the structure for the West, of NATO, to create an energy supply system which would, in a sense, mirror and be a rival to the energy supply systems that were being created in what is now known as the former Eastern Europe. Russia and the Soviet Union was pushing very hard for oil production to be driven to those states from Siberia, and what was happening in the West was a parallel pipeline. In both those cases, it was created really as a political tool more than primarily a commercial tool.
Political to?
The Western powers in this instance, both in Europe and in the Caucasus.
We're going to break. When we come back, pipelines have their own laws. They are like countries unto themselves. We'll talk about pipelines from Azerbaijan to, well, right here in the United States. We're speaking with James Marriott, who is co-author of a new book. It's called The Oil Road, Journeys from the Caspian Sea to the City of London. We'll also speak with Anna Galkina, who's in the same organization called Platform in London, and Professor Timothy Mitchell. Stay with us.